Yeah, I'll ask you where you from. Now, where you really from? The question seems simple, but the answer's kind of long. Britons are on board, and I love a cup of tea in that. But where my genes are from, people don't really MC in that. Now, everybody, everywhere, want their country back. If you want me back to where I'm from, the proper need a map. No man's land, yeah, between trenches, no thing grows there. But it's fertilized by the brown bodies that fall for Britain in the war, so when I spit a poppy grows there. I find my own place in this business of Britishness. So stop trying to find a box for us. I'll make my own approach and fucking concept of us. Motherfucker, my blood and sweat's in us.
So just to give you a little bit of background, so Film East, which is the organization that I help to run, is focused around educating young people on the impact that film can have on their lives. So essentially from being able to understand themselves, to their culture, and the world around them. Your film is very beautiful and is very much steeped in these themes about understanding your identity and understanding your culture and your belonging within society. So I guess my first question would be, what do you hope that young people can take from this film, particularly if perhaps they're watching it when they're still trying to understand their place in culture and within heritage?
I think the funny thing is that I don't know if anyone can really ever pinpoint where they stand. I think it's a constant moving target. And I think people learning to be okay with that and knowing that they have permission to take those risks and finding out where they really fit in or how they fit in is part of the growth stretch that I think that we're sometimes afraid to explore. So I think that's what it really is. It's giving the permission to take those, to make those messy, because the film is messy. It's like, let it just embrace a bit of that messiness, and I think, and in it, I think there is also a beauty that can come to life. And also I think to know that, that everyone comes from such beautiful heritage, and I think we try to kind of forget about that because I think it's in the interest of these capitalist systems to make us forget about them. And it's not sexy for TikTok to talk about Toba Texting and stuff. So maybe there is another way to approach this stuff that I think people can look into outside of the capitalist systems that are around us that kind of make us quite uniform.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with that. And that sort of leads on to, so I'm quite interested in my own personal research and what I deal with cinema. I'm interested in the representation of cultures on screen and sort of how those representations that we see perpetuated throughout media sort of become how we understand culture and its peoples, particularly if we're from outside that. So Muslim people, like a lot of minorities, to put it very lightly, don't often get represented in a positive way. But like you said, your film shows that he's on the brink of success in his life. And perhaps before his diagnosis, his life is going quite well. He isn't really where we see a lot of particularly Black narratives that a lot of them move on to going into gangs or starting working in drug dealings or things like that. You have a character that is very much stable in his world. So was it important to you to create a film that sort of challenged that representation that we typically see of Zed and his family's culture within film?
The funny thing is that I don't think we set out to make something in response or react to that as it was. We just wanted to do something that felt honest and true to our own experiences. So I think this just comes from what we know and what we felt was, to really give something that felt real and right to us. We are aware, though, that I think when we look at some of, the films that do come out from, depicting our communities and stuff like that, we even sometimes caricaturize our own people. And perhaps that's the intention of the filmmaker. And I don't want to ever deny somebody's, everyone has a right to make the film that they want to make. But I think for us, we wanted to really give a slice that felt closer to the experience that we knew.
Oh, that's awesome. So since you are talking about sort of your own experiences, I know Riz, who plays your main character, Zed, he's quite vocal about his experience as an actor and his sort of relationship with being typecasted and sort of his relationship. He wrote quite a beautiful article that I was looking at last night about airports and being an actor. So I know he has said in the past that he didn't want to play a lot of stereotypes of his ethnicity. And of course, starting off in your career, you are sort of typecasted in that way. But did you two have sort of that conversation about trying to create a character and trying to create a film that felt, like you said, felt very real to you, and that sort of felt like a more authentic representation of the British Pakistani people rather than what's sometimes perhaps shown in other medias?
You know, I think the thing is that I've been blessed with like being a filmmaker that's from New York, and New York having very much a radical kind of, you know, Scorsese comes from there, Coppola, like this is a place where, you know, so much of the immigrant filmmaking experience is from, and so much of it is about bringing something that's authentic and real. So all I knew is like my work has always been like, I just try to do what feels real to me and right to me. So I was just trying to follow with that instinctual thing and not get stuck in this question of what are other people going to think, or is this me trying to one up somebody and be smart on this, and this is a coup, and like I wasn't trying not to do it, because I know that when I do that the homework looks really clear, and then you can just read between the lines, like, oh God, I see what this is. This is just like a piece of propaganda or cultural propaganda, which I also find to be very limiting and very boring. I feel like it's more exciting when things are really complex. And you know, this is also about cultural appropriation, where you have, you know, a rapper that's like South Asian, that's also, you know, it's a black art, and like what does that look like, what does that mean? And then it's also about like, you know, generation, like passing something down to generations. And you have somebody like RPG, which is really informed by the Zanny rap scene, and like and that may not be something that Zed feels any connection to, but that's kind of where music is going. It's the SoundCloud rapper is a real art form, and to really capitalize on that is like a form of an art, and that is something that Zed or even I wouldn't be able to understand. But I think that like all these complicated layers are just such an important part of us contending with our humanity and our own irrelevance as artists. So that's really what we were just trying to be about. I think if I ever sat there and this is really a thing for the young people as well, is like, if you're sitting there explaining what your work is, like you're wasting your time. You just need to be writing the work and doing the work, because the urgency and the truth of the work should come out in its vulnerability and its honesty. And I think that in itself is really like the most radical thing you can do. It's because otherwise just go write a paper, go write a dissertation about this stuff. But to really make something that runs and moves, it requires you to throw yourself in and be very vulnerable, which is actually a very universal thing. So then you end up making a film that makes people that look nothing like you still get very emotional at the end of the film, when two people are chanting something that you may not understand, but you're invested in their relationship.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is really what is so fantastic about cinema, is that you are able to capture sort of that culture that you'll never be able to live yourself, but you'll be able to live through the screen. So I just have one final question for you. So do you have any films or filmmakers that inspired you to make this film, that really you wanted to look at for being able to represent sort of a different culture on screen and things like that? Some of those things that we talked about.
Look, the thing is, it's not just about having melanin and all that in front or behind the screen. I think what's really exciting is, what are you contributing to the language of cinema, right? Like that's what this is about. And we come from such vast and beautiful traditions, all of us. And if we start looking at what those traditions look like and what they mean, and how we can bring some of those elements into our work, then we're able to do something that's really exciting. And that's the coup. So for me, it's like, I look at Abbas Kiarostami's Close Up, or another film that I just recently watched that I loved is Bab Aziz, which is by this filmmaker Nasir Khamir, who is a Tunisian filmmaker. And he made this film in 2004. It's not a perfect film. It's a messy film, They're both messy films, but these are important films because they're uniquely about something that is really special, and they're hitting on these universal ideas of like, how do I find God? We'll just go out into the desert and you'll find him. And it's like, wait, what? Yeah, just go. And then there are many paths to God, and everyone takes their own path to God. And you can call it God, you can call it truth, you can call it oneness, you can call it cosmic universal order. I don't care. But there's something that we're all coming to, and we all have our own journeys, and it's beautiful and it's messy and it's complicated. And that's what that's about. And I think that that's really cool. And it's done in a way that's also celebrating this vast tradition that we all come from. And I think that's the kind of work that we need to be doing more of, and less like, well, I am this person, so I want to talk about this trauma and I want to do it in this way, and blah, 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 blah. And then you're just like, dude, like, you've already just done the homework. Like, that's not exciting anymore.
Yeah, I think the messy films, I think you're right. The messy films are the ones that have the most heart to them. So yeah, well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
You too. Thank you so much for taking the time out. Really appreciate it. Bye.
Yep.